AI Mentors is brought to you by Alldus International, covering your business's staffing, consulting and networking needs. Our podcast, AI Mentors, brings you the leading minds in AI, sharing their story, their success and their advice. Focusing on fast-tracking you to the top, AI Mentors cuts through the hype to help you kickstart your data science career.
Welcome to AI Mentors. I'm your host, JP Valentine. Our guest today is Kendell Timmers. Kendell is the VP for Advertising Analytics at the New York Times. Kendell, welcome to the show.
Thanks, JP.
What I'd like to do is start, if you could just give us a quick overview or background of your experience and what's led you to your role now.
Sure. So my background is in operations research. I've been working at the New York Times now doing advertising analytics for about a year. Prior to that, I worked for 12 years in various data and analytics roles at American Express. The most recent one I owned all the prospect data for U.S. card acquisition.
How did you choose the career in AI and data science? What was your path towards this?
So the funny thing is I almost didn't. I think actually when I was a kid, people thought I was going to be an English teacher. My motivation is in solving real world problems. And I think when I was a kid, the fact that you could apply math as a tool to solve actual problems wasn't really apparent to me. Not until I hit calculus and I had a probability and statistics course, I think my junior year. And by then I actually thought it was too late for a math career, which sort of feels laughable to me now that at 17 it was too late. But that was sort of, the way you think of things as a teenager. So I went and I got an undergraduate degree in business, and I took a few operations research courses while I was there, but I didn't really see it as like that I had the background for it. And then when I got my first job out of college and realized I wanted something a little more analytically rigorous, I actually went back for a master's degree in operations research. But what I really liked about operations research is that it's applied. You can immediately see how to use most things from OR in real world situations like logistics or queuing or inventory, but also because it was really diverse in terms of topics. I look at my education in operations research as a toolkit, which I can apply to many situations in almost any industry instead of being locked down into one type of problem in one context to solve forever. And because I'm a curious person and I love the idea that there are firm, provable answers to problems in the world. I remember hearing for the first time about the equation that would let you determine the optimal number of checkout lines open in a grocery store at one time and thinking, wow, there's an equation for that? That's so cool.
Yeah, amazing. And we're constantly being impressed by how technology can impact areas of our lives, and it's only going to continue. So could you tell us a little bit about your role now, what it involves, talk about your team and maybe some examples of the impact that you've had on the Times advertising?
Sure. It's actually a really interesting mishmash of a role. So it's all about maximizing the revenue to the New York Times from advertising. And that includes a whole bunch of different ways of doing that. So designing new ways for advertisers to target, creating insight tools to guide advertisers on how to create the best possible campaign, and devising test plans to optimize the site experience itself for advertising. As everyone's aware, the digital advertising ecosystem is going through some pretty big changes, and everybody is in the process of rethinking how or even if advertising can actually fund internet content. And at that moment, every cent that you can get from advertising matters. So to give an example of some of the things that my team works on, there's a targeting tool for advertisers, officially called perspective targeting, known around the office as Project Feels. And the idea was the data science team used machine learning to predict what a typical emotional response will be to a given article. And an advertiser can choose to have their ads appear on articles that fit most neatly with the emotional content of their ad. For example, somebody might say, I have a very adventurous show going on, and so I want the ads for this show to only appear next to articles that themselves are adventurous in nature, or self-confident or nostalgic, or any of the other 18 emotions that we have. So the targeting is purely contextual, which means we're only scoring based on the article. There's no differentiating by the user. So it's also more privacy friendly, which I think, given the changes with GDPR and other privacy regulations coming up, this will be much more robust. And it's also been extremely successful with a 40% improvement in click-through rate so far.
That's incredible. That was recently publicized, the success in increase in advertising spend from the Times. It got a lot of praise across all media, especially in the changing times, which you touched on, where companies are looking for alternate ways to maximize on revenue spend. So what an incredible increase that has been. Kendell, what is it about your job that you love?
I think so there are a couple great things. One is I'm working with an amazing group of people from different areas of expertise. So tech people, analytics people, data science people, advertising, marketing people. So everything that we do is cross-functional. So you're working with people who are coming at the same problem from a lot of different aspects. And we're putting new products together like Project Feels, which allow us to see the effects on the bottom line. Which is pretty exciting to actually see the impact of your own work. We're also working on many different things at the same time. So while our focus is advertising revenue, there are a lot of different ways to create advertising revenue. So, we're pushing boundaries in a whole bunch of different directions. I tend to get bored pretty quickly. So I love throughout the course of my day to be able to switch from thinking about Bayesian versus t-tests to thinking about the strategy of targeting given GDPR, to being able to understand a little more about, what's loading in the header of our page and how that affects ad call time. To be able to switch between all those things over the course of one day is a lot of fun. I also, beyond the job responsibilities, I do think it's important that you work for a company that you're passionate about. And when it comes to the New York Times, I believe that a free press is essential to democracy. And I'm really excited to be part of supporting a pillar of the free press. That's just one little thing that gives you an extra reason to get up and go to work in the morning.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it's important for everyone to go and enjoy the environment, feel like they're accomplishing something. But when you're part of an organization that's having a genuine impact on the fabric of the world, it's a cherry on top, I would say.
Here at Alldus, we want to make the hiring process easier for all. Whether you're an employer or an aspiring employee, we have the service for you. For full-time work, Alldus will partner with you to find the best person for the position. Using both our network and our rigorous qualification process, we ensure that only the best talent is shortlisted. We will manage the process and work with you to select our most suitable candidate for your organisation. We also offer excellent temp hiring services. At Alldus, we provide a great opportunity to help you and our candidate make the right choice. The contract period is one long interview for your full-time opening, and the extended experience with our consultant helps you make the best decision. Alldus International is here to quickly help you find the best AI candidate. Our experts stay in close contact with our consultants throughout the duration of the contract, ensuring they have everything they need to get the job done.
So just taking it a bit more technical, given your experience across multiple industries now, what would you say are the pros and cons of different domains, analytics versus capabilities?
So I worked in a bunch of industries now. So I did some airlines, a little pharma, some finance, and now publishing. And I think actually one of the best things about doing any kind of data science or data analytics role is the same skills translate very well across industries, and the problems are actually more similar than you'd think. One of the things I've enjoyed most about my career is switching not just industries, but also switching between analytic roles and capability roles. So an analytic role being one where you're running analyses, you might be doing some modeling, and you're making recommendations, versus a capability role where you're actually building something, building a product or a tool or a dashboard that people are using. I actually can't draw a line through all the jobs I've had and say that there's one type of skill or one type of domain knowledge that connects all of them. But I've used some of what I had in each role to get me to the next role. In my mind, an ideal career path lets you kind of skip across industries as well as areas of focus, like testing or reporting or modeling, or domain knowledge like advertising or marketing, or industry specifics like the needs of a regulated industry. I feel like the moment I take two jobs in a row that keep all of those things constant, like doing the exact same role but for a competitor, I'm dead. I stopped growing. So my advice is it's really never too late to switch your role up for something very different. You should never rule anything out at any point.
It's a very useful message to put out there for especially individuals who are either in academia or in their first or second role, that they don't need to fear being siloed by industry, as it is possible to cross industries as long as you can have those transferable skills, which you touched on. You've obviously built out different teams several times, and most recently an amazing team in the New York Times. What advice do you give to people to interview more effectively?
So yeah, I have done a lot of interviewing, and I actually really look forward to it. Building a team of people is one of the most exciting things about my job. I look for 3 things: intellectual curiosity, detail orientation, and a positive attitude. Intellectual curiosity is in part because not every problem a person encounters is going to be vastly interesting. So I'm looking for the kind of person who can see the kind of problems we attack on a daily basis and say, well, that's interesting. How do we figure that out? So, as an example of how that would translate in an interview, we do give a logic test as part of our interview process, and people get a bit of a boost in my estimation if they ask how to solve the ones they couldn't answer, or if I talk about what I do and they ask, well, how do you do that? Or how did you come up with that? Or what equation did you use? Kind of showing an interest and an engagement in problems and show that your mind is always working on it is a good sign for me of intellectual curiosity. Detail orientation, the second thing, would be the ability to catch your own mistakes by building checks into your own work. In my experience, this is something I found very hard to teach. Either somebody's the kind of person who sanity checks their own work, or they just aren't. And it's pretty hard to find that out in an interview. But to the extent that you could describe how you made sure that your conclusions were correct when describing a project you've worked on, I do find that helpful. Sometimes I will also ask people questions, in a theoretical case about how would you check that? How would you make sure that's right? But it's something definitely to keep in mind. And then the third one about attitude. Most importantly, to quote a colleague of mine, I hire for nice. The egotistical genius who knows the answer to everything but can't work with a team has no place in any functional organization, but particularly the modern data analytic environment where many teams have come together to produce a product end to end. While domain knowledge is always nice, I'll take curiosity and collaboration over existing expertise every time. You can teach somebody how the advertising ecosystem works or how to code in a new language like Python, but it's almost impossible to teach somebody to adjust their attitude toward work and towards collaboration. So again, translating that to what to say in an interview is a little challenging, but I will say this is another reason not to let the stated requirements in a posting dissuade you from applying. If you have some of them, but not all, and you know you'd kick butt at that job, just apply for it and let the hiring leader make that call. I certainly would take somebody with the right level of enthusiasm, expertise, and detail orientation, but who doesn't know the advertising ecosystem over somebody who's just checking that box, but doesn't really bring anything else to the table. In an interview, what I'm trying to do is bring somebody out enough past any initial nervousness they might have to be able to show me these traits. So I would suggest people to come prepared with a few good stories of what you've done in a previous job or a class project, and rehearse how you'd explain that project in layman's terms to somebody unfamiliar with the context of it. So somebody outside of your job, your industry, your classroom, and not just to explain the what you did, but also the why and the how, because that's where the passion and the detail come out. And to the extent that you can share it, what insight or actionable result came out of it, because those kinds of results and being able to show impact are always particularly impressive.
Thank you, Kendell. You've been listening to AI Mentors with Kendell Timmers, VP of Advertising Analytics for the New York Times.
Get the Alldus advantage. Become a member of the Alldus community and enjoy some of the following: AI meetups. Once a month, our community gathers to listen to some of the leading experts in the world of data science and AI. Our speakers come from all over the world, including Dublin, Boston, and Frankfurt. We also have our AI mentors. Our experts will provide mentoring to Alldus members. And don't forget our AI in Action podcast. Each week we have guests from all over the world talking us through their education, career and more. Become an Alldus member and get the Alldus advantage. For more information and to sign up for our newsletter, log on to www.alldus.com. That's www.alldus.com. Alldus International, empowering through AI.